Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, welcome to our 10th Sustainable Tourism webinar series by Sustainable Travel and Tourism Africa. We are co-hosting today's webinar with Mwanase Ahmed, the CEO and founder of Distance Relatives Ecolodge and Backpackers. My colleague supporting this morning is Dominic Wajiro. If you have any questions on our housekeeping this morning, Dominic is the right person to send a direct message to. We are excited to have all of you in this 10th webinar series. I was speaking earlier on to Mwanase, and I say to Mwanase that it's the 10th webinar series, and coincidentally have only hosted women for the last 9 series. It's been it's it's amazing, and we were wondering whether the concept of sustainability has got something to do with empathy, and that's why women are taking the leadership in this and are coming forth. And I promise everyone that the next ones and going forward, I will look forward to host gentlemen who are also leading this agenda. I'm Judy Kefagona, team leader at Sustainable Travel and Tourism Africa, and also the founder of this amazing organization. I find it amazing. We have amazing friends and partners like Mwanase, but we also do amazing things in the knowledge space, just talking about sustainability, sharing knowledge around sustainability. And we are excited that in the last nearly 10 years, we have impacted so many businesses, so many individuals, created so many champions. And this is the power of sharing. We believe in the power of sharing, and we have many spaces where we share knowledge, and this is just one of them. So as you join us today, we hope that by the end of today, you will be converted, you will be one of the believers, and you will then start acting, become a practitioner. But we are here to convince you to be a believer in this amazing concept that is called sustainability. I'm just going to go back to my screen, if I can get my screen, so that we can start the discussions for today. Are you able to see my screen? Okay, something went wrong, and I'll do it again. As I share my screen, Dominic, do you just want to remind us some things about housekeeping today?
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any question, you can post it in the chat. We are going to revisit, or you can message me directly in the chat box as well. We are also going to allow maybe 2 or 3 people to ask questions at the end in the Q&A, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to cover the questions that have been sent in the chat. So we are open to have that discussion. We'll also like to hear from you, your perspectives as well, just to share, because we are here to share knowledge, all of us. Everyone knows a little bit more than the other person knows. So be free to share. And yeah, looking forward to having an engaging discussion today. Santeni.
Okay, thanks, Dominic. Thanks, everyone. Let's remember to keep ourselves muted until we have a chance to speak, so that we don't interrupt the other people who are listening, the concentration of others. And so I'll go straight to our topic of discussion today. We are talking about demystifying sustainability in tourism. That topic by itself, and we're looking at the case of distant relatives, Ecolodge and Backpackers, and the founder and CEO, Mwanase Ahmed, is my co-host today that will help me to break down this topic of demystifying sustainability in tourism. The topic by itself raises questions. of myths. As soon as we talk about demystifying, it means that there are certain myths around sustainable or sustainability in tourism that have been carried on for a long time and which have probably hindered the progress of the concept in certain segments of the industry. Those perspectives around sustainability have something to do with how the practice happens. And so today, Mwanase is going to break this down for us, how they have done it at Distant Relatives, and she's going to share with us some of the common myths around sustainable or sustainability in tourism. But before we get to, I give the mic to Mwanase. Allow me to share something around sustainable tourism perspectives, which sometimes lead to the myths that we are talking about, or what Mwanase is going to highlight, and then demystify them by sharing with us the practice. When we look at sustainable tourism as a concept or as an approach, we find that there are many different perspectives. If you look at books that have been written, if you look at course units that are offered in different universities where tourism is taught. If you look at policies that are written by organizations, if you look at studies on consumer trends, if you look at marketing materials around sustainability and the products around that are promoted as green, they bear the label green, and the actual practice of it, you find that all these have different perspectives around sustainable tourism and sustainability. For the purposes of those, I believe most of us have interacted with the term sustainable, which means renewal or regeneration. Most of us have interacted with the word combined with development, sustainable development, which means in broad terms, for those who are here for the first time and listening to this for the first time, it means that it's development that takes into account the needs of the current generation, the needs of the current business owner, the needs of the current communities, the need of the current traveler, without compromising the ability of the future traveler, the future development practitioner, the future consumer, without compromising their ability to enjoy the same quality of experience that we are offering today. Basically, that is what is sustainable tourism. It's tourism that renews itself, tourism that is valuable every day. The value that is offers in 2024 should be the value that is offers in 2030 or in 2050. So we are not compromising on the authenticity of cultures. We are not compromising on the quality of the environments and spaces that we're sharing. We're not compromising on the quality of the experience. So it's about finding that balance so that what we enjoy today can be enjoyed tomorrow by those who are consuming tourism. And in that respect, then you will find that we have these different perspectives that I have said, and these perspectives is what has contributed to certain myths. If you talk to a policymaker, for example, from their perspective, and you look at policy documents around sustainable tourism, you will find that they look at sustainable tourism as a type of tourism or a model of tourism. That is the policy perspective and policy approach to looking. Their emphasis mainly is that, okay, we have a type of tourism and we want to organize it in a particular way. The consumer's lens of looking at sustainable tourism, when the consumer looks at a sustainable tourism, they are looking at a distinct, very distinct product from what is available commonly in the market. And so that is why you find terminologies like organic, authentic, right? In sustainable tourism, because there is the product the consumer is looking at something that is different from what is quote unquote conventional. That is the perspective of the consumer. And sometimes the consumer is looking at something that is higher in value than what is regular. And studies have shown that their consumers, many consumers are willing to pay a little more because their perspective is that sustainability or anything sustainable must cost a little more because it comes with a little more commitment, right? The marketers, from their perspective of sustainability, are looking at our they're looking at a brand. Yeah, marketers see sustainability and they see a brand that they want to milk from, they want to get the most from, they want to isolate it and pick it out. And destinations are today using this to market and brand themselves as sustainable tourism destinations because they want to reach out to a certain market. And so for them, sustainability or sustainable tourism is a brand of tourism that has certain qualities. And they then identify those qualities and take those qualities to the market. And mainly marketers in tourism have looked at the sustainability brand as an exclusive brand, very, very exclusive brand, and are actually offering it for much more and higher value in the marketplace. The tourism practitioners, many of them also look at sustainable tourism as a market segment, which means they think that we can have a market segment that's conventional tourism, mass tourism, and have another market segment that is sustainable tourism. They see it as a market segment. And so they tap into bits and pieces of it. And this is what leads to the problem of greenwashing. When practitioners look at this as a market segment, because they want to have a little bit of that market segment and they don't want to invest in it, so they cheat so that they can tap into that market segment. Then we've got the whole, don't even want to start talking about the perspectives from an academic point of view. The academic point of view probably puts all this together, but they look at it as a concept. You know, they want to break it down as a concept, and they want to look at what philosophies are in there, and so they even break it down much further, and sometimes it can lead to confusion in the marketplace. So then of course we have the community perspective. There's a perspective of community. They have an expectation. They have communities. When you talk about sustainable tourism, they think about benefits that are coming to them. What will this tourism bring to us? What benefits? Is tourism that brings benefits to the community? It's tourism that encourages community ownership. It's tourism that encourages community participation. So communities have a perspective around tourism. Out of these perspectives emerge certain myths that some of these myths have, like I said at the beginning, have hindered the growth and adoption of sustainable tourism, just as an approach to tourism planning, development, management, promotion, and consumption. When we look at all these perspectives, we're actually saying that sustainable tourism is not a product, it's not a market segment, it's not a type of tourism, it's not a type of product. We are actually saying combined, it is an approach to tourism planning, development, management, promotion, and consumption. And if I could go ahead, I would go ahead and qualify it. And I would say that kind of tourism planning, management, development, promotion, and consumption leads to something. Okay? It leads to conservation and preservation of natural areas. It leads to shared prosperity with communities. It leads to thriving businesses whose progress is actually reflected in the communities where they are. It leads to a new level of consciousness for travelers. Those are the things that this approach then leads to. But this approach is not those things. Okay? Sustainable tourism is not those things. When we do it right, it leads to those things. So sustainable tourism is not the protection, the benefit to the people. It's not the protection of the environment and our culture. Those are the outcomes. Those are the fruits that we get out of sustainable tourism. By itself, it is an approach to doing tourism, to doing business, to traveling, to consuming. Thank you very much. I will stop here with this introduction and hand over to my friend, my dear friend, I have known for a long time, who's a great champion of sustainable tourism and more, a champion of everything that is right, a champion of everything that is fair, a champion of everything that is just, a champion of everything that is inclusive, a champion of everything that is equitable. I could go on and say many things about Mwanase Ahmed, but I would allow her now to introduce herself and take us through the next step of this conversation today. Yeah, Mwanase, what are these myths? How have you demystified them in your work at Distant Relatives Ecolodge? Ladies and gentlemen, Mwanase Ahmed from Distant Relatives Ecolodge.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judy. Nice to be here with you. And thanks to all of you for joining us as well. That was a wonderful overview. And for me, there's not, well, I'll always engage in conversations around sustainability with all sorts of different people. But I love engaging with Judy because we have very aligned perspectives which look at the holistic side of what it is. It's not a product, it's not a destination, it's a way of thinking, it's an approach. So it's always really wonderful to share a conversation with someone who gets it. We all have different understandings and where we always learn from each other, we always share, we learn new practices. But yeah, a woman doing incredible things for the world of sustainability. The thought process with such integrity. So thank you, Judy. Thanks for having me. So my name is Mwanase Ahmed. I was born in Lamu, Kenya. I've lived in a few different places around the world. Came back to Kenya 13 years ago for a 3-month holiday and never left again. So this is home. And for me, the environment, nature, communities, justice, these have all always been important parts of my thoughts, where my heart leads me. So I think of, I really think as we look at sustainability today, we'll be looking at the interdependence of a lot of different elements. And I personally don't, I really avoid the word sustainable because I think there's a lot of greenwashing, there's a lot of misconception, there's a lot of, lack of understanding. And I think what I'll do is just open up my presentation so that we can dig right into it. First, we'll be looking at some of the different definitions of like sustainable or sustainability, because it can mean many different things in different contexts. And then we'll be looking at what it's not. Judy also started to speak about some of the things that it's not as we try to define simple, practical ways of integrating elements of sustainability into our approach, into our way of thinking at all points of life, business, building. So, Judy, do I have permission to share my screen? I do. Wonderful. Thank you. And I think as we look at the tourism industry, which was a part of the focus here, but we'll learn a lot about different areas as well. I think the tourism industry is so important. It's very important to economic growth, sustenance, to well-being, to the GDP. It can be very wonderful as an industry, but it has tendencies of really exploiting communities, people, resources, cultures. So if done with intention and integrity, and as we redefine the type of tourism, the type of industry, the type of communities, societies we want to have, it actually has really the potential to work harmoniously with mutually beneficial elements for communities, for environment, in a way that can conserve and protect and have more harmony. So I think all of us as individuals or leaders within our respective industries or hotels or homes or spaces, I think this is just a reminder that we all have a lot of potential to be the change that we want to see, to be the hummingbird, to show that we can do things differently. And we should never strive for perfection. There's never a perfect, it's not a destination. It's always about what decisions can you make along the way? How can we integrate this into our practices? So yeah, thank you once again for joining us. Let me begin my presentation. Last disclaimer, Judy and I could talk about, principles of sustainability elements for hours. So we will touch upon a lot of different things today. But of course, we're always both available for future conversations because it could be a whole day presentation, but I'll do my best to keep it within the time frame so that we also have time for an engagement at the end. Okay. I believe you can all see my screen. I can't see you.
Yes, we can. I can see it, Mwanase.
Great. Okay. So we're looking at demystifying sustainability with a little bit of specifics, looking at practical ways that we integrate it into our practices, into our thoughts, into our approach at Distant Relatives, Ecolodge and Backpackers in Kilifi. Just as a point of correction, I am the current CEO, but I came in about 7 years ago, 4 years after the place was founded. So I've been in and out since the beginning, but I was not an original founder, but I am the current CEO. So as we look at the demystifying sustainability, I think also this is just a reflective question for everybody. What does it mean to you? How do you understand it? So we can look at a few different definitions. Sustainability could be the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level, like the sustainability of economic growth, or avoidance of the depletion of natural resources to maintain an ecological balance. The pursuit of global environmental sustainability. So these are some of the common definitions when you look it up. I'm not going to play that video now, but the balance between environment, equity, and economy. So trying to now, some people in defining it are starting to look at, it's not just about financial sustainability or environmental, but there is more to it. And then, the integration of environmental health and social equity and economic vitality in order to create thriving, healthy, diverse, resilient communities for this generation, generations to come. So the practice recognizes how these are interconnected and requires a systems approach and an acknowledgement of complexity. So I think as we look at popular definitions, from the first one to the last, you can see there's starting to be a bit more of a holistic approach to it. So now, in defining it, what I think is really important to remember, it's actually a holistic approach, a holistic style of observing, of thinking, of decision-making, and of acting. So it's a way, it's not just, so we'll continue. It's a journey, it's not a destination. So there's no, I am now a sustainable product, and we'll come to why that is a bit difficult a few slides in. So it's multiple integrated pillars. It's looking at culture, it's looking at environment, it's looking at people within your team, outside, around. It's looking at your society, it's looking at finance, biodiversity. So there's many different elements that we want to be thinking about as we look at sustainability as a concept. There's a lot of different, there's the 4 C's, the 4 P's, the 4 R's. So there's many different definitions of it, but we'll start to see that it touches upon, an interconnectedness and interdependence and a holistic approach. So sustainability really varies depending on the context. The sustainability of a project, or a person, a space, a community, a country, an industry. So there's not just a one definition, and it really adapts according to circumstances. So if I, living in the coast of Kilifi, am trying to understand water and water management, there's a lot of things to consider. I need to consider how often it rains, how much, what is locally available, what's the, what are the temperatures do. So, or if you're looking at a building design, you'll need to think about what resources are locally available, what's not, what's finite, what are the traditional practices, what standard of comfort am I looking for my guests. So as much as we can share some ideas, which a lot of people can then take and pull and see where to integrate into their businesses, it also adapts based on your circumstances. What are the needs of your space, of your clients, what's available, and how do we kind of approach it holistically? It's extremely important. As much as it's a trending buzzword, it's also, our Earth has finite resources. I was going to quote, but I'll bring that in later. So we can tell our climate is changing, our resource availability is changing. There's more natural disasters, toxic waste, pollution. I think in Uganda, I believe it was last month or 2 months ago, there was this pile of garbage that was out of control and not being managed properly, and it literally collapsed and claimed the lives and homes of many people in a community. So, there's the rate at which we are depleting our Earth, at the rate at which we are kind of exploiting our humans around us and our communities around us. All of it has tipping points, and it's better to be on the right side of the change and trying to integrate a different approach rather than wait until water is no longer coming through taps, or people are so distraught and living in such poverty around you that your business is being targeted, rather than finding ways to grow together and work harmoniously. So also, when you look at consumer trends, people are interested to know, what is this place doing with environmental practices for the community? If you also look at regulations, as much as they kind of are made in a vacuum sometimes, it's something that we all need to be considering more and more in our daily practices. So we'll also look at how it kind of, some of the principles of permaculture, which is like a more permanent culture. How do we design something? How do we look at what future generations will need, and think beyond today, and build more resilient, regenerative types of industries and engagements. Again, it's very centered around principles of like caring for the earth, caring for people, caring about equity. So incorporating some of these different elements as we look at the approach, but do not mistake sustainability. So we're also going to look at what it's not. Sustainable, it's an overused word that sometimes makes it lose its meaning, its value, and its integrity. For you to get a product and say, this has been sustainably made, you really have to think very carefully, okay, where did the plastic come from? Where did the metal come from? What went back into what resources were used? What were depleted? What's been regenerated? So I think it's something that you have to be really cautious, and we really have to question, if you're championing sustainability, how do we make sure we're engaging in the concept in a way that is not greenwashing and that actually does have integrity? And so as we better understand it, we'll also be able to be a part of changing how it's used. So sustainability is not a campaign or a pillar or a branch or like a CSR activity or a way of marketing. This is an example that I think is also quite important. It's not National Tree Growing Day 2023. That was really stood out for me. We had a target of 1 billion trees. We wanted to offset carbon. We wanted to combat climate change. The expenditure was around 27 million Kenya shillings just to rent choppers for one day to fly heads of state around to water a tree here and there. High fuel, that consume a lot of fuel, that produce a lot of carbon. It's a huge amount of money. So it was at a time where there was a lot of drought. So when we're talking about planting trees, we need to actually also be growing them. So when we look at something like that, like having trying to do something good, quote unquote, while also, I think overall we spent 150 million shillings to try and do something good. For example, that 27 million shillings that produced a lot of carbon to fly a few people around the country, if that went into CBOs that are doing restoration, mangrove planting, tree planting, with communities, and you're generating livelihoods and wealth into the communities while they're being a part of conservation and tree planting, that could have gone a lot further in achieving our goals if this was actually done with some integrity and thought. So there's a lot of greenwashing. Let's make a ban on household waste separation. You're now going to pay 4 million shillings if you don't separate your plastics, and metals. But if we look at recycling infrastructure, we actually don't have a lot of capacity to actually recycle that separated waste. It all ends up back into a landfill. So when we look at sustainable practices or things that are better for our communities, for our environment, it really needs to be holistic. It needs to be done with integrity rather than kind of reactive. Again, like the non-biodegradable seedling bags, that looks, maybe from the outside, it looks like Kenya is doing something good for its environment, but we don't have non-biodegradable seedling bags. They don't exist in this country. So we're now penalizing these nurseries and farmers without having a holistic approach to kind of make ourselves look good on a broader global market. So this is why I say it's not a way of marketing. It's not a campaign. It's not only solar power and energy saving lights. That's definitely an element, but there's a lot more to it. It doesn't have to be expensive. So I think there's a lot of fear that, it's either an expensive product or it's expensive to convert. So there's a lot of things that are actually cost saving rather than expensive. It's not inconvenient. Some people are like, oh, it'll be a nuisance to try to see how to adapt this. But when you can start to work with yourself and then your teams at looking at kind of some of the questions that will guide your procurement or your building and design or your gardens and kind of food, your property management, you'll see that it's just kind of you start thinking a little bit differently, which it's actually very accessible. It's not a huge transition. It's little baby steps, and it's nothing new. It's not a Western ideology or a foreign concept. If you start looking at some of the practicalities of sustainability, if you go back to kind of some of our more traditional ways of recycling our water, of being aware of our resource consumption, of using local, natural, regenerative materials, you'll see that it's kind of taking us back to some of what we've lost. So this, I think, is just kind of a nice. I made it. I hope you don't judge my art. Well, you're very welcome to. But the monkey saying, hey, you're so incredible. I heard that you live sustainably. And the lady's like, yeah, I live under a coconut tree. All that I eat are coconuts. I drink coconut water. I bathe in the ocean. I wear palm leaves. I use coconut branches for shelter. I plant and grow new coconut trees all the time. And I use coconut leaf toilet tissue. So I think this, is a little bit of just a funny joke, but also tells you if you were going to be fully sustainable, that is kind of what it may look like, which I think just makes us aware that we should be cautious as to how we use the word, so that we understand it's like a journey. It's incorporating elements of sustainability. It's not the ability to transform into like being fully sustainable. So today, I think we're not really going to look at any more theory. We're going to look at practical ways of integrating sustainability into your mind, into your approach, into your lifestyle, your space, your business, your communities. And we'll have a little introduction into distant relatives and understanding our approach. Again, it will be slightly rushed, but in the interest of time, but I hope that you'll definitely pick up some tips and tricks and ideas. And as you can see, my contact is also on every slide should you feel interested in reaching out and sharing more. Both Sustainable Tourism and Travel Agenda, as well as myself, are doing some consulting, working with people, businesses, individuals, communities, to see how we can also share knowledge, learn from each other, and keep pushing towards the change we need to see within this industry, country, and world at large. So Distant Relatives is an Ecolodge in Kilifi. It's a community-oriented, environmentally conscious Ecolodge, providing unique, memorable, and responsible experiences. So as you see here, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. I was left this land, and we're actually borrowing it from our children and our children's children and great grandchildren. So that's something nice to remember. And so as we look at sustainability, we want to look at how it can be integrated into all elements of your thinking, your approach, your business model. And we'll touch upon each one a little bit more, but looking at employment, are you employing your local community? Are you finding ways to generate revenue and build the society around you? What resources are you using? What can you minimize? How can you think a bit more about, what your needs are, and how to be considerate of communities and livelihoods and natural resources? So we'll come into that a bit more. When you're looking at procurement, are you looking at how can we support local artisans? How can we be buying things that are locally sourced, that add value back into our local community, that also can be beautiful and creative? When you're buying mirror frames, for example, is there a local artisan who can produce something that's unique and beautiful, and the money can go back into that community? When you're looking at, your budgets and finances and things like water, I think a lot of people in the hotel industry would know that water is, we face a lot of droughts, and even just in communities, there's a lack of water availability for hygiene, for livelihoods, and when you run out of water, you start buying Bowsers, which are extremely expensive, not great environmentally and not great financially. So how can we integrate methods of water conservation, or of rainwater harvesting, or of water upcycling? So we'll look a bit more into that, but thinking about environment and resources actually has a lot of cost-saving benefits. When you look at your property landscaping and your building designs, as well as your community partnerships, your waste management, your activities, excursions, what are you offering to your guests? Things that are going on throughout, your property, you have the chance to spark people's minds and interests. So, like one of those little signs that says, what is it? If only trees provided Wi-Fi, people would be planting them everywhere. Too bad they only produce the oxygen that we breathe. So little things like that can also start to spark interest in conversation and thought. And yeah, how it is really integrated into all elements of your decision making. So it's a journey, it's not a destination. So you're looking at your needs, you're thinking about your needs, your customers' needs, or you're looking at maybe the waste you're producing, and then you're like, okay, maybe there's quite a lot of that. Is there something else I could use it for? There's certain things that, at different times you can harvest. It's a cycle. Then it's a self-regulate, accepting feedback, be open to change, be open to when things aren't working, how does it need to be modified? How do you reduce your waste after observing what you are creating, or upcycling that? So I'm not going to go through all points, but it just kind of shows that it's a cycle with little small steps along the way. And when you look at environmental conservation, I think the biggest thing is to be, to know that there's a difference when you want to put just a solar panel on your property to get a gold star rating, which is very important. It's great and it's an important step, but also to looking at kind of integrity in your whole approach. Are you doing this because you're actually genuinely interested and care? Or are you doing this because you think then your customer will be more interested in your property. People see through the lines, you know. Do you want your marketing person to be marketing you as sustainable, but really you don't have any practices or principles in place? So I think integrity is really important. Consciousness of your surroundings, as we talked about already. You know, looking at regenerative and finite resources and making the best decisions you can. The cement industry, the brick industry, metal industry, it's all very destructive. So do you have alternatives? Are you choosing the best possible option? And we'll come into some of our designs here, but you know, you just have to weigh the pros and cons and try to make the best decision that you can. As I said, no one is ever going to be perfect, but we just have to do the best we can along the way. Another thing to think about is longevity. So, you know, if I do this today, will it be able to last a bit longer? Will I have to replace it every week? And holistic integrated design systems. So, you know, if I'm looking at, I'll come to this a bit later with some clear examples actually. And making people-centered decisions. You know, if there's something I would like to do or would like to offer, would like to hire, is there someone within my local community that could meet that need, that could support on it, that could provide this product? You know, is the decision I'm making about my rates or what to sell is that actually going to allow me to take care of my team, of their needs, or am I going to model this off of really exploitative labor budgets? And how to create more harmony. So now into some practicals. For example, I think if you look at bottles, glass bottles, any hotel, a lot of hotels, bars produce a lot of this. In Kenya, we don't have a recycling system for a lot of glass bottles. Some beer bottles are recyclable, some brands are not even recyclable. So there's a lot of creative things you can do with it. You can build walls, as you can see on the top right. On the bottom right, you'll see that we use them as lampshades in our gardens, the top half. So you'll see a gentleman from our community who's cutting the bottles, sanding them. We're creating a job. We're making something out of our waste. The top can be used for a lampshade or some decorative installations. You can see we have some nice, beautiful, unique glasses. We're not having to purchase glasses. No carbon from the offsetting, or no carbon production from the glass production, the transport of it. We're providing employment. We're creating something unique and beautiful. We're upcycling our waste. So you can start to see that, you know, by taking a bit of a creative approach to your waste and your needs, you start to think differently. So you'll see on the bottom right photo here, it's one of our fences. And it's just, we've cleaned the bottles and put them between two things of chain link. It's beautiful, it's unique. We're upcycling waste, creating jobs, and reducing, you know, our negative environmental impact through choosing other materials as well. It's a transition. You'll see in the bottom center image, those are our outdoor showers, which are amidst a bamboo grove, and you'll see there they first had makuti panels around it, which is just woven palm fronds. But being outdoors, being shower with termites, with nature, with water, they would disintegrate and deteriorate quite quickly. So we actually slowly changed it, and we built this, as you can see in the top middle image. This is a different shower you're seeing, but we started to do this wall, which is a very thin wall made out of metal and Haitian cloth and a little bit of cement, and Niru with glass bottles all through it. So we wanted to do something that was still using glass bottles, but would last a bit longer and not deteriorate. So that image in the top left corner, you'll see we got really excited, used all the bottles, which was incredible, but it actually took a really long time, was a bit more resource and labor intensive. So we found that it was actually not the most sustainable for us because we had to spend quite a lot more money. So that's when we went to the kind of half bottle walls, which was a happy medium. So again, it's, you know, it's observing and changing. With water, as we know, it's a finite resource. So for us, we have composting toilets. You can see the top left image. We've done a little enhancement, but you'll see it's sitting on tires, which is upcycling old products to build a foundation. The building is actually made from mud. So that block and a lot of our cottages, they're all made from mud in the traditional Giriama design. and then plastered inside. And then we have a composting, so it's got a really nice built-up toilet seat, and then you've got a barrel underneath it. So that's saving water, and I'll talk a bit more about the composting toilets, but every time you flush a toilet, you've got, 20 liters, 10 liters of water going down the drain, going into sewage. Our showers and sinks all go into banana circles, so every bit of water that we use goes back into another life and growing something else. When you look at water, we also harvest our rainwater. We have these grey water circles. We have banana circles. We have grey water systems. So in our kitchen, everything that goes through the taps goes through some grease traps, and the water gets cleaned, and then it's used again to irrigate some food, a food forest where we have some fruit trees and such. When we do our design and our gardens, we also integrate like a drought resistant approach. So you can't see much of the gardens here, but we don't plant lawns. We grow food, and we grow flowers, which you'll see in some of the other images, that don't require a lot of water. So we'll plant during the rainy season and let them grow and be resilient and more sustainable. So that reduces our water consumption as well. We have a saltwater swimming pool is also, rather than having toxic chlorine, we look at when you put salt into it, it actually is made of sodium chloride, so it can chlorinate, and then that water, when it goes back into the earth, it's less toxic as well. So here you can look at this composting toilet idea, and so not only are you saving water, you're actually also creating something valuable. You're not using sewage, or you're not creating sewage. So there's a separation between the urine and the poo, and then it goes into this barrel. You put some sawdust in it. The separation means that the smell it doesn't smell very much. The sawdust helps to cover it up and also reduce the smell. Once the barrels are full, we take them out, take them down to the bottom of our hill, and they sit for 6 months. They break it down, and then breaks down any bacteria. Then it's turned upside down into the sun for 3 more months, and you get what you see in that wheelbarrow, which is actually incredible fertile human manure. We don't use it to grow tomatoes, but we do put it back into the environment then for the trees and for the kind of land around. So you're saving water, you're creating something resourceful, you're not producing sewage, you're generating value. So this is not practical everywhere. That may be good for some certain ecolodges. Some people may choose to look at their sewage and put in biodigesters or other types of systems that can also combat their waste or reduce their waste. Some may choose to use, water-saving toilets. We actually also did put in a borehole, which has really brackish water, but now we do have our first few flushing toilets, because we also do want to accommodate, the Muslim community and other cultures that really want to use water when using the toilet. So there's a lot to consider, environmental, people, community, resources, your guest needs, the standard of luxury you would like, and how do we make luxury a bit less environmentally harmful and destructive. So on that, if you're looking at how to reduce water, how to give maybe limited times in showers, how to upcycle the water that's then used in the showers into maybe, irrigation of other parts of your property. So I think that's why we say it's different for everywhere. It's different for everyone. But these are some of the different ideas. So tires as well. Old tires are so many, and there's not that many uses. I think people have seen maybe some shoes or some bags made out of it. But tires, our whole volleyball court has tires all around the outside. We use them as foundations. We use them as retaining walls for prevention of soil erosion, for pathways and steps, for defining garden barriers. We've made chairs out of it. So you'll see a bit more of the imagery. And then we're also, a lot of times we even get them for free because people don't want them. Or you pay maybe 50 shillings, 100 shillings. We make tables out of them. So we'll again, it's just like starting to think a bit creatively and a bit differently. And then looking at things like composting your organic waste, upcycling your waste where possible, into making something new or through a recycling place. And then when you look at construction, So I'll show you the actual examples soon, but these are some nice images. So when we look at wood, we also try to see, for example, we'll buy old wood from an old boat that's leaking from the canoe fishermen, and they can't use it anymore. That wood has been weathered. We'll buy it. They'll get a little something to put towards their next boat. We'll get to upcycle that and not like continue cutting down trees. So how do we, and then we look at, regenerative, quick growing, but neem and things like that. But I also think we need to continue to be more careful because deforestation happens at a much quicker rate than reforestation. So I think, one amazing thing like Flip Floppy and Lamu is starting to produce furniture out of recycled flip flop, which is incredible. Or if you're producing furniture, what alternatives do we have? So how do we start to just think a bit more creatively there? We avoid as much cement as possible. We also use sludge to do some of our painting, so it's not a toxic paint. It's a byproduct of cement, white cement. It's a byproduct from the cement industry mixed with seawater, and it's got its own little mix, and we actually paint our interiors with that. We build using mud. Let me go on now. You can start to see a few of the practicals. So you'll see in the top, there's a guy who's painting our mud bandas, but it's actually using like another kind of mud-based mixed with a little bit of red oxide. And again, it's got its own little recipe, but it's made from predominantly natural materials. The banda itself is made from mud. And I'll show you a photo of the interior later, which also looks, you wouldn't believe that you're actually in a mud hut. And then it also keeps it cool. It's got nice ventilation. You'll see some of our courtyards there on the right. Those are our outdoor kind of showers. We do have 5 styles of accommodation. So we have cottages, we have private rooms, we have safari tents, and we have dorms. So you can see the dormitory. So we're working around nature instead of cutting it down for our building. On the bottom center image, you'll see our pool table, which is also made from old dow wood that's been recycled. Again, creating something beautiful. A lot of art from our local community. When you look at procurement, or so in the bottom right corner, you'll see one image of one of our cottages, which it's got a small foundation, but then we've put a small little thin layer, about 2 millimeters of a Neru plaster on the inside so that it keeps it cleaner, brighter, less dusty. So it's a mud building, but then with a little small layer of plaster there. And yeah, when you start to look at, you'll see we'll use a lot of sisal poles, which are kind of a byproduct of sisal production. So when you're looking at procurement, again, how can you buy local, build local, look at bulk items that reduce packaging? What can you put back into your local community? Are you sourcing grapes from up country because you think a fruit skewer needs a grape on it? Or, what are you finding that grows and thrives within your local community that'll also be more cost efficient? When you're looking at purchasing even hardware, timber, is there a local community-owned company that also has competitive prices? What clothing are you offering? What are you selling in your boutique? Are we looking at, is it ethical? Is it ethically made? Is it produced by child labor? These are real. So if you really want to think about conscious decision-making, boutique products, can you support local artisans and build the local economy, your hygiene products? This is where we look at one of the contradictions. I was in a hotel in Nairobi and they had this nice dispenser on the wall instead of the single-use plastic products. And it was like, this is a sustainable soap dispenser, but it's been made in London. So we're buying something in London to ship it over to Kenya so that we can say it's eco-friendly. So again, just thinking a bit more holistically. And with food, expanding on what we just talked about, how can you be sourcing from the local community, maybe your eggs, your chickens. Again, it's just once you start thinking, how can my decisions, how can the revenue that I create build local economies while still retaining quality and value? What am I able to grow on site? Maybe you don't have a lot of space. Maybe you have a lot of shade. We've planted so many trees here that the whole thing is actually a forest canopy now. That is great, but it means we don't have as much sunlight. So our fruit trees take a lot longer to produce. But again, we like to source, okay, maybe some papayas from this woman, eggs. You want to make procurement simple, but you also want to make it benefit your local community. When you look at sustainability, you also want to think about your team and their well-being. As we said, the industry really can exploit long hours, low pay, no leave days, lack of rest, not growing them, not doing kind of training development. These are all people. They're not appendixes of your machine. How do we make people feel appreciated, feel valued, feel important? How do we not just make them feel, but how do we bring them into feeling like a part of a family, like important assets? How do we think about their needs, their families, their well-being? If you look at minimum wage of, I don't even know what it is, some people within the industry will be paid even less than 10,000 shillings. Minimum wage allow for people to be paid that. Now put yourself in that position as a family member. You maybe take home 200, 300 shillings a day. How are you going to support your families, meet their needs, buy them clothes, send them to school, feed them, rent somewhere, build your own future? So we really need to think about well-being of the people around us, and design our models in a way that does not determine profit based off of complete exploitation of people. Find a balance, that is not, it's not a conscious way of thinking, it's not a sustainable way of thinking, and it's really important if you also want to bring value back to your team, to your guests, to the experience, something really important to consider. What type of activities, excursions are you offering? For us, we do different things like mangrove planting, or going sailing with local dhow operators, or cleaning the beach, cooking classes in the local community. We offer workshops to kind of share knowledge within our local community. Maybe we're learning about indigenous plant medicine, or maybe we're talking about free DJ work, having a free DJ workshop to share knowledge and build capacity back into the community. So you have resources within your space, you have knowledge. What are we doing to kind of build and share knowledge within our communities, as well as offer fun, unique, impactful, responsible, but memorable experiences that bring revenue back into the local community? You don't have to have everything happen within your space. People's experiences and connections is what will lead them to come back, to bring more people, to recommend your place. So how are we integrating with our local communities, with our local cultures? How are we also introducing them to our local communities in a way that will lead to kind of respectful interactions? Yeah. So, bringing people out into the village to try palm wine, creating an inclusive space where families, where Kenyans, where gender transient people, where local community members, where your own team feel comfortable to come and buy a soda, have a soda, bring their families, where, a space that's inclusive, that makes people feel valued, is, I think, really important as well in redefining kind of this industry, not just a market or a space that's for internationals or the wealthy. Like, how are you creating a space that also your local community can come, access your products, feel welcome, engage? You can see in the top right, we have, a day where volleyball is played between the team, between our guests, our staff, where we work with local schools and go out and do some mangrove planting. So there's a lot of different ways of integrating people care, community well-being, a nice creative product, your financial needs and constraints of your business, resource management, the activities and experiences. So looking at kind of elements of sustainability is also, it's a holistic approach. So I hope that, through this today, you're also able to start to see, okay, in looking at my design of my place, my property landscaping, or the offerings I want to give my guests, or how to structure my budgets, or the team, or, water harvesting, or natural resource management, or what food products I'm offering. I hope that that you started to get some ideas as to how to look at a different approach to your business, in your tourism industry, in your own personal life decisions, that can also bring more consciousness into the way that you're operating. So as I wind down, I think I wanted to just open up the chat as I end my conversation, as I end my presentation. I would love you to share what you know. I think the most common understanding of like sustainable practices looks at energy and power, and I would love to hear. So maybe in the chat, you could just share, you know, what are some of the implications of the current power sources and energy sources that we use. How is that a bit destructive towards communities or people? Let's give you a chance, or land, to share, and also give us some solutions around how can we be more conscious in our use of power and energy, natural cooling designs. So please, I'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your ideas there in the chat group. And yeah, remember, it's, you know, it's about connecting all of the dots. It's about Earth and its resources. It's about finances, about conservation, boosting your local economy and enhancing the destination. You know, the well-being of our local community and our Kenyan economy. It's about using your purchasing power appropriately, power, energy, integration of your needs. It's about the sustainability of your business, also from a financial perspective, a resource perspective, market perspective. Who are you bringing in? Your team, adaptation and resilience. You know, how are we adapting to the changing resource availability needs? How are we creating more resilient models, whether we're looking at weather, water, resources, climate, providing unique experiences, also important. There's a lot of, you know, what are you doing that's different, that's innovative, that people are looking for experiences on that. As you can see, we also were acknowledged as one of Kenya's signature experiences. So feel free to come and check it out. Yeah, and just looking at, it's a type of consciousness and inspiration. How are we working together, working on ourselves to learn, to share, to innovate, to create, to challenge ourselves to do different, but with little steps along the way. And I love this concept of cathedral thinking. You know, when cathedrals were being built, the same person who laid the foundation would actually never be alive to see the finished product, because it would take decades and decades and decades. So as you think about, you know, your resource use, or your communities, or maybe the father of some children that you're employing, or what activities you're offering, or how we're interacting in this land, in this country, on this continent, we're actually trying to lay foundations and do things in a way that many, many decades from now, people will still have a beautiful community, authentic culture, happy lands, beautiful spaces to share and enjoy, water to drink among that. And I think just to remember that, you know, your influence is huge. Our ability as individuals, as business owners, as I know, so there are some people from government, ecotourism, from travel agents, what we do actually has a hugely significant impact, even when it feels really small. Remember to be the hummingbird and be the change you wish to see. So I'm going to invite you to unmute yourselves in an orderly fashion. So everybody can go ahead and unmute. And I'd like us to just read this out together. So please unmute yourself. I can't wait to hear your voice other than just mine. And I'll give us a countdown, and if we could actually read this out together. So I hear some audio in 3, 2, 1. Change.
Change is the rain.
It starts with
one single drop.
We
only get one shot. You only have one blue dot. And be the one of the drops of change.
Okay, that was very beautiful. The lack that you can stop there. The lack of harmony shows the perfection in imperfection, or the lack of simplicity. So as we say, yeah, change is like rain, just starts with a single drop. We only get one shot. We only have one blue dot. So you can be one of the drops of change. And it's simple things. It's the baby steps. It's the micro decisions. And as mentioned, should you wish for support along your journey, Both Judy Kefagona and her team, as well as myself, are always ready to walk the journey with you. So, asante ni sana. Thank you so much. And I will hand back over to Judy.
Thank you so much, Mwanase, for that enlightening presentation. I hope that you have learned something today of what sustainability is not, and what sustainability is, and how we can all make a difference from where we are at, right? Uh, so before we proceed or I make any further comments, there's some questions that had come up earlier on, Mwanase, and you can look at the chat. Dominic has posted some of them. You can attempt to, we have a few minutes left. Maybe you combine the number of them and see what you can respond to quickly. Dear participants, allow us to take 5 more minutes of your time. So Mwanase can address some of the questions. How does this and relatives measure the success? Tourism businesses tend to turn a blind eye on social aspects, but I think that one you have covered very in detail. In the case of the how shall has the local community around been engaged? You can repeat that in one sentence, but I think you covered it even by talking about your internal communities and fair wages, uh, engaging the communities in different activities, but you can do that. How can industry shift from treating sustainability as a mere marketing? That's the whole discussion today of this discussion. So you have just asked what has been said already. We say
Judy,
sustainability.
sorry, just to clarify, Dominic, are these questions from the application form, the registration form? Because then I can also try to skip. Okay. And of course, if anyone also has any new questions or feedback, we'd love to hear your thoughts and we'll try and answer in the last few minutes. So feel free to also share any new questions that emerged now that we've seen the presentation.
If I may, I think I said this is a first go round for me. And I think, first of all, I'm blessed to be here, and I'm glad that I came across your invitation in the WhatsApp yesterday, because this is very timely for me. And as we move along, you will understand why. So as I like to take things away and, process it and digest it, if you don't mind sharing your slide so that I can just go back to it and, digest it. And then whenever I bump into you, just be prepared for a ton of questions.
Sure. Thanks, Ali. Will do.
Another thing I want to mention is that for all of us, this presentation is recorded and it will be on our YouTube page. If you want to listen again to the beautiful voice of Mwanase, you can have the recording later on today from our YouTube page. You can listen as many times.
YouTube page.
Yes. You will receive a link for everyone who registered. Mwanase will have it and we'll share it also in the WhatsApp groups. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Mwanase, let me try and take on what you can very quickly and briefly.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you all once again. How do we measure the success? So for us, sustainability, environmental conscious, social conscious, I think it's always been something that we were founded on and our ethos. So at every step of the way, it's been integrated into our decision making. It was not something that we did so that we could prove we were doing something right. Being said, I think a lot of people would like to see figures and numbers. So for us, we can look, from water consumption to savings to how many bottles we've used to tires we've used to the lack of impact on others, to workshops. But I think for us, it would be, it will definitely require like a whole position on itself, because it's really at every junction of everything we're doing. And it's not really ever been done because we need to report back to others, although people do want to see how and why, if you did not from that, presentation. But I think it's just starting to do your accounting and like, how many bottles did you use? How much water did you save? So treating your sustainability like accounts, as Judy would say. how can it be not a marketing gimmick? I think, I mean, it's really up to each and every one of us to know, are we doing this with integrity? Are we doing it because we want to like pretend? And it's not difficult to do small things that are actually genuine that then you can speak out. So for example, we've decided to use glass bottles in our garden bed, you know, instead as a way of upcycling our waste. That is actually something you can do that's extremely easy. So then you can market something honest rather than, you know, fake something. So it's not difficult to start integrating it. Improving the living of the Beach Boys. First of all, I think that's very, again, different and contextual in different spaces, different relationships. We actually work with them as well, but it's not a one-step, you know, we look at what different activities can they provide to our guests. Can we vet those activities? Are we engaging in respectful ways? So we kind of set standards that can also, or some of them offer village tours up in the village for people to go around and then do some, you know, imnasi and traditional food. So it's different in each space and time and how many people are there. And but it's something you can certainly explore if you start to want to do that. But then there's many methods, you know, many different ways. A multi-stakeholder approach. I do agree. It's definitely multi-stakeholder. I think it's very difficult because from a point of like governance, there's also so much that's important that needs to happen from like, you know, at government level, but we can't sit and wait. So we all have to be doing what we think is best as we try and influence policy, thought, competence, a lot of things. So we all have our parts to play. So I would say, you know, get involved in all elements of it, get involved in conversations with your local government, look into yourselves, work, there's industry associations, you know. So I think it's a multifaceted approach and we can all be a part of the different spaces in whatever way we can, in whatever capacity. Maybe for you, it's working with your local communities on like community solutions to community problems. Maybe it's also working with your government to support that. Maybe it's working with the hoteliers around you to say, how can we come together and achieve this? So it is very multifaceted and very collaborative. Who should be the leader? You should be the leader. We should all be leaders in this space. Energy conservation. Thank you, Alfayo, for sharing some of the different approaches when it comes to power and water. Apart from making awareness, what are the activities being put in place? Tyson, I hope that your question was kind of answered during the presentation. Maybe you joined late, but I believe we showed a lot of different ways that we are integrating it into our approach here. And as I said, it's not something that's a destination, it's more of a journey. So, you know, sustainability being done, it will never be done, it will never be complete. It's always about integrating these elements into our decision-making process and our approach, revisiting, observing, analyzing, modifying, and taking baby steps towards improving. I think there's actually, I think I've answered most of the questions there. I see one last one. Thank you, Mara. Good luck on your project. Happy to always share ideas. And Tyson, your final question. Tourism and social issues are very related, many vices, including sex tourism and prostitution. What sustainability measures are put in place to ensure that stay is meeting expectations? Again, I think we all have, like, I can only share my opinion, but I think it's up to each and every one of us to determine, like, what would we like to promote, what would we like to allow, as much as we encourage like inclusivity and respect of different practices. For me, how I would look at that is I think that, and this is again a very personal opinion, this is not reflective of a sustainable tourism travel agenda or any other partners, but personally, I feel like sex tourism is also reflective of a gap in livelihood generation for some people in the local communities. So, you know, people selling their body for livelihood and for sustenance is, for me, really reflective of also lack of other options. I don't think it's many people who choose that channel. I think it's, you know, trying to find ways to support their well-being, to sustain themselves, to sustain their families. So I think, you know, I'm not one to, I completely accept and I understand that, and I don't judge it, because I do understand that people have livelihoods to meet and some go into that situation because they have no other choices. But personally, I think the approach that I would look at is more, how can we, generate better alternative livelihoods within our communities so that we can encourage different ways of meeting needs and of growing ourselves in our communities and families. So I don't think I would be the industry expert to tell you how to meet their expectations, but rather, how to create a safe space for others and work on the holistic approach to that area or topic. Thank you. I think I've answered all the questions. Back to you, Judy, but you're muted.
Yes. Am I muted? I am not.
No.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mwanase, for that enlightening presentation. As always, we can feel the passion in your voice as you say this, and we know that you truly care for a tourism industry that benefits all, a tourism industry that is more inclusive. If I could use these terms in concluding, that when we listen to Mwanase, what she's actually telling us is that we're looking at a tourism industry that is defined by certain values. That sustainable tourism, some of the myths are what she said earlier on, and what I started by saying also by looking at the different perspectives. But actually, what we are saying is that we are looking for a more accountable society, tourism industry. We are looking at an industry that is accountable itself, to its staff, to its community, to the environments, to the cultures. We're looking for a tourism industry that is transparent, right? In its practices, in everything that it does, it can actually give a trace of what the impacts are. They are aware of what they are doing. We're looking for an industry, like I said, I used these three terms to describe Mwanase at the beginning, but actually we're looking for an industry that is inclusive. We're looking for an industry that is equitable, right? And when somebody asks about community and all that, this is when we talk about inclusion. How inclusive is the type of operations or the type of industry that we are trying to promote as a country? Whether we are doing that through policy, whether we are doing that through training, whether we are doing that in whatever space we are working, how inclusive is the industry? We are looking at an industry that is aware of intergenerational equity, so that what we do today does not jeopardize the opportunity of the future generations to enjoy the same. We are looking for an industry that cares for shared prosperity. Shared prosperity means that you, as an industry or as a business, we can't thrive in areas where our communities are living in abject poverty. The prosperity of tourism must be shared, must be seen in the lives of the people of place. And somebody talked about sex tourism. In my perspective, sex tourism is an expression to the tourism industry that there's a group of people who want to be included, but they have no systems. There are many barriers to being included in tourism, and they have brought themselves to the table in the best way that they know. And the best way that they know is to come through sex tourism. So the industry should be listening instead of condemnation. We should be finding out, how do we create opportunities for these people in the industry so that they can feel included and operate in that particular space. We are talking about an industry, somebody asked about collaboration, that is about collaborations and partnerships and participation of different players, different actors, different interest groups. We need to identify them. Sustainable tourism must have, I always say, if you're a sustainable operator, if you claim that you are in any way using this approach of tourism, you should tell me very clearly who your stakeholders, who your interest groups are, and who your partners are. And they must reflect the society in which you operate in. How do you engage the small trader who sells fish at the gate of your premises? How do you engage that sector of that young girls who who are dropping out of school and trying to find a space in the tourism industry. They are supposed to be part of your interest group. An industry that does not recognize all its stakeholders and interest groups is an industry that is already broken. And then we find a broken system, and we find other people who come to the table using different approaches. Then, of course, I used the word regeneration earlier on, we're looking at an industry that is regenerated. So these are some of the principles that outline the whole concept or approach to tourism that we described earlier on in the opening remarks, and what Mwanase has demonstrated practically that can be done on the ground. This is what distant relative Ecolodge does. Another organization or business in a different context will find itself in a situation with different resources and opportunities and partners and people. They will have to interpret that environment the way distant relative has interpreted its environment, so that it becomes a tourism model that we can look at and say, surely their approach to tourism is a sustainable approach to tourism. As I finish this, you gave me 5 minutes. I'm in the 7th minute. As I finish this, I just want to say that at the core of this approach to tourism is public accountability and declaration. Mwanase mentioned that we shouldn't do it to be seen. We shouldn't do it to report to anyone. But the only reason that we are publicly accountable for it is that so that people who have the same questions as, so how do we know you're doing it? How do we know you're even measuring? How do we know you're making a difference? So I always say, what we cannot measure, we cannot manage. So these 3 things are important for me. At the core of this approach, right, is measurement, is documentation, and is communication of what you're doing. And that's what I call public declaration. Today, Mwanase is making a public declaration. He's actually telling us, this is what I do, and you can come and see and verify for yourself that we actually do these things. There are many different ways of public declaration of the things that we do in sustainability, but it is important that we, at the core of that, we are able to demonstrate that we are careful enough to show the path that we have taken and share with others the path, growth pattern that we have experienced. With those many remarks, I say thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Mwanase. We are deeply indebted. Thank you to each and every one of you for sparing your time to be here, for sharing with us. We will share the link to today's recording, and you can share it with as many people as possible, so that as many people as possible can come to the table. And together, like Mwanase said in the last, I wish you could put back your last slide, so that we know that it's just like a drop. Each one of us can make a difference, just like the hummingbird. So thank you so much for coming. We will have one more webinar left this year at the end of this month. Be sure to sign up and join us as we close the year on a high. Thank you so much. Change is like rain. Yes, Mwanase. You can say it as we finish. You can read it. You can read it as we finish, Mwanase.
Change is like rain. It starts with one single drop. We only get one shot. We only have one blue dot. You can be one of the drops of change.
It's a simple thing.
Thank you. I welcome us to all just
thank you
come
very
off
much.
of mute as we say bye. Thank you.
Everybody,
thank you, Judy.
Anyone who can
Thank
put
you
on
so
their
much.
videos,
Thank you.
if you can put on your video. Some of you have already left, but
Feel
thank
free
you for
to say
being here.
bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Sana. Thank you, everyone.
Have a blessed day.
For coming. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye. Bye, everyone. See you next time. Follow us on social media. Yeah. Asante.
Thanks, Judy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.